Have you ever wondered what it actually takes to become an all time great? I have. Hi, I'm Nayo Ayegbajeje, and today is day one, step one in my journey to become a great investment banker. So, how did I end up here? How did I end up making this video? Who am I? What's this all about? From starting out being born in Nigeria and then being raised in Riverdale, Maryland, pursuing medicine to Howard University, pivoting from that, becoming a photographer, and then pivoting from that and becoming a wealth manager. There's one thing about me, I sure can pivot, and it's time for my next one. My next pivot is to become a biotech investment banker. And this process of documenting is my way of staying accountable, setting goals, and reflecting back on how I did, creating a community that can hold me accountable as well. So here, let's start from the beginning. So I'm Nayo Ayegbajeje. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. I lived there until I was 6 years old, until my dad moved us to the United States. I was raised mostly in Riverdale, Maryland, and my dad kind of presented me with three options. Like many Nigerian immigrants, you could become a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, and that's what success looked like. Now, my dad would never admit to this. He'd say he never pushed me in any one direction, but he did give me the book Gifted Hands by Ben Carson when I was 10 years old. And so it seemed like being a doctor was it for me. So I pursued that to Howard University, where I started out pre-med as a bio major. But almost immediately, there are a couple of reasons why that wasn't the perfect fit for me. First, about a third of my class were actually biology majors, which made it really difficult to access resources. And then I was still figuring out a lot about myself, but one thing I did know at the time is I love numbers. I love math, and those patterns just kind of always made sense to me. So I wanted to pursue that a bit. So after having some conversations and finding out that there were scholarships available to physics majors, I decided to make the pivot over and become a biophysics major. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that process. Also, during my time there, while trying to make friends, I was a really sheltered kid. I joined an organization called Howard University Elite Models and found myself a lot more comfortable behind the camera than in front of it. So I became a photographer, and the entrepreneurship bug kind of bit me, and I started a small business, started learning about finances and client management for the first time. That was incredibly rewarding. So at this point, I had spent my last 2 summers doing physics-related internships, but if I was going to become the next Ben Carson, it was time to start shadowing doctors. So, who do I shadow? Yeah. So I didn't know any doctors, had no connections to doctors, so I did some research and found out that the highest paid doctors at the time were actually radiation oncologists, the specialty. And, well, sign me up. They were making north of $700,000 at the time, or at least that's what the internet told me, and I believed it. So found one that I could shadow through Howard University Hospital and spent about 2 weeks going in every day. And honestly, I hated every minute of it. Aside from hearing some cool science things that were happening, the process just didn't feel like something that I personally could sustain for a 40-year career. So, cue my existential crisis. What do I do? I'm starting to figure out that med school may not make sense for me. And as someone who thought that I'd be a doctor for a majority of my life at this point, this wasn't something that I had to contend with before. Didn't really know what to do. So I just started keeping my eyes open, and I continued in my photography business. One day I came across a question and reached out to a photographer that I looked up to. And he mentioned that he ran a program, a 1-year-long internship, unpaid, in Kentucky. And it was something to do. So after I graduated, I moved to Kentucky with no connections, no income, and decided I was just going to figure it out. I had a great time. I was bartending for a year. I was attending lots of events as a photographer. I was at the Kentucky Derby. I had a lot of really good experiences during that year. But I also learned a lot about myself, learned a lot more about what money meant, and realized I had a lot of questions that I really wanted to get to the bottom of. So, in having conversations with my best friend who graduated with a business major and was currently working in wealth management, I decided some of those questions could be answered in wealth management. So, I made the pivot there. And I did so for the last 5 years, working in wealth management, earned some series licenses during that time, and made some really great connections. I was able to work with people like myself who are starting to build wealth and understand money for the first time. And I was also able to work with people who had long established their nest egg, work with business owners, people who had gotten their wealth from the ground up, and made a lot of great mentorship relationships. And having some of those conversations, they introduced me to this concept of an investment banker and made it sound like the most interesting job ever. So at this point, I'm sold. I know I want to be an investment banker. So I'm doing research on how to do it. Looks like I have to go to business school and pivot in as an MBA. And in order to do so, if I want to get a pretty decent job as a banker, I have to get into a decent school. So to do that, I have to take a GMAT. So I did that, got a great score, got into Wharton Business School, which I'm attending now, and was able to secure a summer internship at an investment bank. So that's where I am today. In about 6 months, I'm going to start my internship and need to figure out exactly how to prepare for this experience, for this opportunity. So I decided a good option for myself as someone who loves creating would be to create these videos, have conversations around things that I'm aiming to learn between now and then, reflect on how I did, and hopefully, as I start to build a small community, have people to keep me accountable, have people to challenge me when I understand a concept wrong, and introduce me to new ideas. So that's why I'm here. If at all this sounds interesting, I'd love to connect. Connect with me on LinkedIn, subscribe here, leave a comment. Let's do this together. Let's figure this out. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Again, I'm Nayo Ayegbajeje. Peace.